Hello, everyone. Good morning in Mexico and good afternoon in South Africa. My name is Arturo Mendoza. I am the director of the Mexican Studies Center. We are representing the National Autonomous University of Mexico in South Africa, and we are housed at the University of the Witwatersrand. Welcome to our webinar series, South-South Dialogues. The aim of this webinar is to address current and emerging issues from a global South perspective in a space of conversation, reflection, and debate. Today, we have a very unique webinar with two outstanding sculptors, one from Mexico, Paloma Torres, and the other one from South Africa, Angus Taylor. The session will be moderated by Barbara Rosso, who is an active cultural worker based in South Africa. The title of today's webinar is The Poetry Discovered Through Engaging with Materials. I will explain briefly the format of the webinar, and then I will give the floor to Barbara to conduct the session. First of all, I'm going to read the abstract and Barbara's bio. Then Barbara is going to introduce our guests. She's going to read their bios. They are going to present their works. And then there is going to be a session in discussion with Barbara about, interesting topics that they have addressed during the webinar. And then we will leave like 15, 20 minutes to questions from the audience. Please feel free to share your comments or ask questions in our Facebook chat box. And we will be welcome to and delightful to give them to the sculptors. Okay, so the topic of today is the creative process of these two wonderful artists. Paloma Torres and Angus Taylor are iconic and world-renowned sculptors. Their work has been exhibited in museums and art galleries around the world. Both artists show a creative process that is based on a profound intuition and the magnificent dialogue they display with the materials they use. Their large-scale sculptures shape and configure the urban space in which they are embedded. For both artists, public space represents a melting pot where indigenous materials take shape in relation to their surroundings. Undoubtedly, a key element in the success of these contemporary plastic artists has been their creative process based on their deep knowledge, mastery, and understanding of the materials they use, their intuition, and their openness to explore the unknown. In this talk, Paloma and Angus will share with us their masterpieces, their experiences as artists, and they will also talk about the artistic process that has given them the renown they deserve today. Likewise, they will share their thoughts about space as a dialogic element between users and urban landscape, and they will also discuss the current problems that plastic artists face nowadays. Now, let me introduce our moderator, Barbara Rosso. She's an Argentinian creative consultant and producer with a background in economics. She specializes in creative practices and cultural industries in the Global South. Throughout her career, Barbara coordinated several cultural projects, studied literature and theater, and worked as a cultural journalist for Revista Chocha, a feminist digital magazine in Argentina. In 2018, she moved to South Africa to work at the Embassy of Argentina and coordinated their cultural program. Since then, she has been harnessing cultural ties between Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa. She currently works at the Joburg Contemporary Art Gallery Art Foundation, JCAF, as a project manager for Latin American art. Barbara is also co-founder of an independent literary project that represents African authors in Latin America and Spain. Thank you very much, Paloma, Angus, and Barbara for being here today. And I will give the floor now to Barbara. Thank you.
Thanks, Arturo. And thanks at the UNAM for coordinating this dialogue on the artists. So now I'll start reading the bios of the artists. Paloma Torres has a degree in visual arts and a master's degree in color engraving from the National School of Plastic Arts of UNAM. She took courses in France and Argentina and has done art residencies in Mexico, India, Canada, Austria, China, France, Finland, and South Africa. She has more than 100 group exhibitions and 60 solo exhibitions in various museums and art galleries in Mexico, Paris, Berlin, Beirut, Doha, Kuwait, Bangkok, and San Francisco. In May 2021, she inaugurated her most recent work, El Hilo de la Tierra. She has taught at several Mexican universities and has given workshops at universities in Thailand and South Africa. In 2014, she became a member of the International Academy of Ceramics in Geneva, Switzerland. She has received numerous distinctions for her work, and her artwork is part of various public and private collections, such as the ones from the Young Museum in San Francisco, California, the Museum of Mexican Ceramic Art in Fuping, Shaanxi, China, the Daniela Chapard Foundation in Caracas, Venezuela, the Museum of Modern Art in Mexico City, the Manuel Felgueres Museum of Abstract Art in Zacatecas, the University Museum of Contemporary Art in Mexico City, the Museo de Arte de Ponce in Puerto Rico, and the National Auditorium. And then Angus Taylor's bio. Angus is well known in South Africa and abroad for his powerful, often large works of sculpture, characterized by outstanding craftsmanship and the use of alternative and natural materials. He focuses on the material process with a direct flow through the artist as collaborator and the material as conveyor of meaning. From the conceptual development through to the end result, he interrogates his materials and uses them as signifiers of thought, while also aiming to make art that communicates with viscera. In his view of public art without an agenda, referring to the absence of political and cultural baggage of the past, he replaced traditional heroes with male figures portraying something of the heroism of the common person, with male figures transcending overt stereotypes. Therefore, his sculptures read as neither black or white, but rather as inclusive and above all accessible and inviting forms, as anti-monuments. So those are the artist bios. I don't know, Arturo, if you want to give the word to Paloma.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. Well, Paloma, please welcome, and we'll give you now the floor. If you can please show and share with us your wonderful work.
Ya, ahí va. ¿Ya lo pusimos? Ahí está. And good morning, Mexico. Good afternoon in South Africa. I'm Paloma Torres, and I'm a visual artist specialized on ceramic sculpture. When Arturo Muñoz invited me to speak about this topic, I was very pleased. And that was in the first place because I graduated from the Plastic Art National School, which is the ENAD, and from the San Carlos Academy. So the National Autonomous University of Mexico, which is the UNAM, is my alma mater. In the second place, it is because before I would come back from South Africa, Inge de Beer took me to Angus' workshop in Pretoria, which made me be quite impressed because of his space and because of his work that I saw all over South Africa without knowing who the sculptor was. And in the third place, South Africa is one of the most interesting places I ever visit. And even if I go back to South Africa in a virtual form, that made me quite thrilled. I'm starting with this picture that I'm building a column, and I will go ahead with several other columns that I work on along my professional career. For me, the column is a kind of urban nature. There are our trees that are built by men. They're what hold our houses, the backbone of the body that keep us straight. And in many cultures, it was an element to commemorate and to tell stories. As you will know, the first, here you can see some sculptures in a ranch in Mexico. When right now this is in my old studio. As you will know, the first material I used as a sculptor was clay. I was quite fortunate to learn how to use it in the workshop. That belonged to Gerda Gruber, a workshop that belonged to Gerda Gruber, who is a Hungarian. She was just coming from Europe and she taught at the ENAD, from which I got my bachelor art degree. What I learned from her was how to build my sculptures as a sculptor, using slabs and coils. That's the way I lived almost all my ceramics. You know, Gerda Gruber was like a Hungarian, very, very rough. And she said that we don't have to know how to use the wheel because if we don't have money, we were going to do pottery. So The only thing you can do in that studio was to work with coils and slabs. So I realized that it was the material I was going to require to make my sculptures. It allowed me to build the pieces directly. This made me reflect on the importance of the process in the work of art, and in sculpture, it was twice as much since I had to be built and then go over the pieces of work, which make the whole be another way to create art. When a sculpture is built directly, you make each one of them by completely individual. They can look alike, but they're never the same. Each piece is loaded with emotions. Your mood affects it. What you're listening to, what you're reading, and well, each column is loaded with different feelings. Here is where the poetry of the material lies, and that is when you allow the soil to talk to you. All these columns that you're looking at are installed in the places where they are situated. I'm interested in the way the public walks around them, in the route that is formed, in how it goes in circles, and how each one occupies the space in different manners. Which interested them is the texture, the material, the size, the shape, the color, and well, it turns out to be an endless path that is not only visual, but it's also physical. I will go on showing several samples of the sculptures that I made along my professional career.
Yes.
This sculpture is part of the MUAC Museum, that is the Contemporary Art Museum from National University. So it's important because it's the only contemporary museum that we have in Mexico City. This is 5 towers made out of clay, and you can see from one side to the other. And interesting in as you can see, in all this kind of, in the city in general. Then there's a series of columns. This one is in the Foreigner Affirming Street, and there are 12 columns that people has to cross away. So for me, it's important, as I told you, that people can walk around the sculptures. Then I have, then I have this one. It was a project very interesting because it was done by Legorreta architect, this apartment, but he told me that he wanted something that people has to cross into the sculptures, not just as like a flower pot, but you know, people has to live and be part of the people that lives in that apartment. So they have to cross along all this apartment. The next group of sculptures were made for the Mexican Pavilion in Shanghai World Fair. And then when they returned to Mexico, before coming to Mexico, they stayed in an art fair in Miami. So their art fair in Shanghai was about the city. So they asked me to do some buildings so people can see from one side to the other. And it was called, this sculpture is called Looking the Sky. These 3 columns are in a, it's funny because these columns are in a private house in Punta Mita, and they have to be like a part of the landscape of the house. It's funny because also this was the house of the inventor of the iPad. Huh? So it was very iconic for me, this sculpture. This is, do you remember the other sculptures we saw? The UNAM took this sculpture for the political science faculty. So here we have the students with the sculpture. And this one is the sculpture that the Young Museum acquired for his collection. But the Harry Carpet, that was the director that made that museum, he wanted that in each venue of the museum, were sculptures from, for example, this is the pre-Hispanic venue. He wanted a Mexican sculpture, and Atsu is in the African venue. This one is of my last exhibition. This is in the patio where I had my exhibition, but what I like from here is that you can see that the sculptures are integrated to nature. So even people, they have to cross along the sculpture. That's what I like it. These are 2 clay columns in a garden. And one more time, in art and nature. And this was, they invite me to this kind of project. They give me the whole patio to design it. So I decided to do a humid patio. So people can take the sun here, be seated in this humid patio, but also here you have all the grass. So during the afternoons, they can be, I don't know, any spectacle or something, and you can be seated in the grass. So that's, you have 2 kind of venues in the same place. And it's a humid patio with 3 columns in ceramics. And this one is in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. So you have seen a lot of columns, but they are different, okay? From the column, I went to the wall because, as I already told you, the urban landscape is my leitmotif. I come from a family of architects, so even since I was very young, I was taught that space is awfully important for the human being's development. And the landscape determines the character of the society. So when people that lives in the mountain aren't the same that people that lives in the city. And if the urban area is like Mexico City, then that's still more, since the city is one of the largest ones in the world. The life conditions aren't quite good in many cases. Evidently, people move in a massive way and lose their individuality. Some live in very small places that they share with many members of their families, and that is why private spaces doesn't exist. Families, and that is why private spaces doesn't exist, not even when they sleep. Another problem are the visual and noise pollution, billboards, cables, garbage, and crowds. That's why my work has to do, that's why my work has to do with how important it is to pay attention to all those problems. That if they were solved, we would have a society, citizens that were less violent, because if you live in a 36-meter square home with 7-8 people, you want to kill your mother the other day. So that is totally, we would have a society that would be less violent and not citizens that are totally deranged because of the problems such as living and circulating in some chaotic landscape that aren't harmonious, and all they do is create mental disorder and overcrowding living conditions. I also start making lattices which are elements that allow me to create private spaces. Here is one of those lattices were made with patterns taken from the templates that came from the laser cutting that were facing each other, and I use them to do sculpture and to do lattices like that. This one is a mock-up of a lattice I want to do, a big one, but this is done with the templates that I took from garbage, and the other one is this one is another lattice that I do with ceramics. Okay, one of my greatest lattices is in this lobby. Esta. This is an important, no, sorry. This one is a big lattice that I did for a building and for the motor lobby of a building. And it's interesting because I use several layers. They have 3 layers, so you can see the white of the sculpture. So, you know, I love all this working with the capillary walls, since they also allow you to see without being seen, or a public space can be turned into a private one. All this is why I start painting my work in white. A little bit like my work is in white, because I can be able to clean my landscapes. The aerial cables were an important feature, and at the same time, I start taking photographs of all the skies in the city, where the horizon cannot be seen anymore. Our vision of the world stopped in a first, in a close-up view. All this work comes from the aerial picture that I had the chance to take in some trips to the city of Puebla. I saw a devastating way. Here you can see one of these colonies. I saw a devastating way the reality of the urban areas. So I start taking aerial photographs from Mexico City, which I place in Gobelin tapestries. This is the tapestry of the other. Since the first glance I took from this area in the city were about the concrete textile, I was horrified to see what it means to live in the outskirts where there are hills that are covered with concrete, and that is why I decided to place my images on textiles, so there can be an exact idea of what I saw. That's why I present this gobelin called The Way to Puebla, which is an image from Nezahualcóyotl city. This is a gobelin of 240 centimeters per 340 centimeters. And I did it in the city of Guadalajara. This encouraged me to take pictures of the belly of the city, where they were excavating in the place where the subway line 12 was being built. And I photographed it as if it were kind of urban archaeology. I used these images to work on a plush fabric in Oaxaca with the painter and teacher Francisco Toledo. But while the lady artisans were pricking wool, I started using what was left in the workshop. And in the way I made many pieces with felt, such as columns and flat textiles. I pick up everything that was discarded in the workshop, and that is how I managed to produce some of such sculptures, like this one, for example. No? How I managed to produce such sculptures, which led me to embroider also with mats and with a piece that measures 180 centimeters long per 120 centimeters. This is part of the subway, the pictures of the subway. This is another picture. Well, I took pictures of the second floor of the peripheral ring road as if they were a project block, since I was on my way to the workshop. With this, I confirmed how badly our forests are destroyed, so that the cities can be built, and start working with the pieces of wood that I pick up from the site. I also made the doors from the Elena Garro Cultural Center. It is a wall made of wooden formwork in bronze. It's called the Transformed Forest. That is 4 meters high and 16 meters long. I install a sculpture. This is part of this installation of the wall. I install a sculpture at René Deran Foundation, this one, in Val-David, Quebec, that consisted on 7 trees called the Forest of Desire, which were made of wood that was going to be discarded This was of good that was going to be discarded, and the leaves would be photocopies of my projects that weren't carried out. What I would accomplish by doing this is that the wood and the paper could go back to its natural environment. I finally photographed the city. I finally photographed the city's belly, working on a kind of urban art. I work with this. As I was making in that time, working with the wood and making the tapestries, I was invited to carry out a project in London, and I created a sculpture called Building the Ring, which was a Mexican construction scaffold with a mesh cloud made of bronze. Then I made my three. This was a bench. Now this, and here we have these were the Goyas. These were sculptures that I made also with mesh and with the discarded of the foundry that I took and I started working with, and we did the three Goyas. In Mexico, the thing that you say in UNAM is el Goya, so these are our three Goyas, no? And at the end, I also did create a textile design with the refined paper money. This was a project that I did for Bank of Mexico, and I made them a textile made of all the refines of the money paper. And it's a big, I don't know how to say. It's a textile, it's about 150 per 220.
Paloma, if you can start wrapping up.
Sorry?
Like if you want, you can start wrapping up.
O sea, we have the 20 minutes also. We're going to finish or what?
Take
Yes,
take 5 more minutes, Paloma.
Yes, 5 more minutes.
Okay, no, I'm going to finish right now. It's about
Yes.
to finish. I took pictures of the second floor. I took pictures from the second floor from the peripheral ring road. If it were a project, no, this I told you. While I was working with the textile, I also had this constellation of spheres in ceramics. I also work with the stone. So when they commissioned me to make the commemorative piece for the 7th anniversary of the Swiss Confederation, I decided to work with a common green stone from the area of the Canton de Grisons. I made a stele that symbolized the megaliths from Falera. Then I worked on some benches. This is the stone for Switzerland. And then these were the benches I made in stone. I had the chance as well. This is another, it was a meditation bench. I had the chance as well to work with cement, with a material that I'm also interested in. So I made a monument to the hero children many years ago, about 30 years ago, with ferrocement, and a moon stele with concrete and iron. Here you can see, no? And iron. And then these are some walls that I start working with the ceramics, but I also introduced to this kind of works and walls. I introduce iron and rebars and different kind of things. I started making materials. This is because I like to work with all the materials that I found in the street and things like that. I would like to include in my speech, this one, it's the sculpture that is in Venezuela in the Fundación Daniela Chapar. And it was part of the exhibition of the Bienal de Barro in Venezuela, and they acquired the sculpture. It's a big one. These are some mock-ups for different kind of sculptures in landscape, no? And this was a plaza that I designed in Villahermosa, Tabasco, that was, I think in this plaza, that the water can come because the river flows every year. It's like kind of Egypt, no? That they flows. So the water can come and nothing happens. So it's in a Mexican white stone. And it's very interesting because you can see from all over the place. And these are some other murals for hotels. And this was the last one that I'm working with is, this is a kind of river, but it's in the middle of a lake that is going to disappear because we have a big problem with water in Mexico. So this is this has some fruits up. So you can go there just to sit down and listen the music of the lake, what they are talking to you about. And this is a mural that I did in Auditorium, National Auditorium. It's a clay one, but also it has some you can see here, wires in iron. So you can see the paper, the paper for music, no? Because as the auditorium goes to sing and to perform different kind of things, it's like perform your life in here. So you can see the scale. Well, I want to thank you very much, all of you. I would like to, so I have been my pleasure to share with you what my artwork is through my vision about how to transfer the urban space aspects of a city in different ways of looking at them. And I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paloma. Let's give the floor now to Angus. Please, Angus, thank you very much.
Okay, hello. So it's good morning in Mexico, and it's good afternoon in South Africa. Arturo, you said we're going to share our masterpieces. One of my lectures when I was still studying said, you must just know you're not going to make many masterpieces in your life, and that is true. We try maybe, but we don't always succeed. Paloma, thank you so much for your presentation. It was lovely to see all your work. And by God, but you work hard. I mean, it's a big body of work, and bravo, madam. You swifted and shifted from materials and process, from columns to walls, from materials to iron to, I must say, it's applaudable, and it was lovely to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Angus.
It's only a pleasure, ma'am. Okay, so I sort of worked more on the theme, and I thought I'll speak about materials and the poetry of engaging with process and the mediums you work with, and through that you discover. So the first one is the fixed to the fleeting. Now, normally when we think about sculpture, we tend to think about permanent monuments erected throughout our lifetime and after, but sculpture can do other things. So I wanted to see if I could shift away from the static and rather celebrate the transience that happens throughout our being, that we are, you know, birth, life, and death, and it's but a short pause between two great mysteries, in the words of Carl Jung, our existence. And so I made these sculptures in charcoal and then burnt them. And whilst I burnt them, I photographed the process. And it was a beautiful process, as you can see visually. And I find it very stimulating. Instead of only working, because at university, I also studied and still teach 28 years later, we tend to think about bronze and marble and permanent materials, ceramic, you know, things that can last the test of time. But sculpture can do other things. Some years ago, when I visited New York, I was in a conversation with somebody, and I realized that just before I turned 30, that if I want to contribute to the world of art, then if I want to take part in the conversation, I thought, better than I speak from where I'm from, with the materials around me. So I thought, instead of studying or sharing my love for physics or philosophy or whatever, rather share the first-hand knowledge I have, and I do that with material from my direct environment. Now in South Africa, I think as the same with Mexico, we have a very bright sun, but we also have quite dark shadows. It's an environment of contrast. And the contrasting environment, of course, is very stimulating, I think, for a creative person. If everything was sorted and everything was quite gray, I think I would find it less stimulating for the creative process. So I started working with rammed earth. This is a head I built out of thatch. It's 2.2 meters tall. It's almost 2 by 2 by 2. It was a massive thing. Internal metal structure, and then dried thatch just stacked around it. To be able to display it, I had to chemically treat it with a fireproof material, otherwise it would be quite a fire hazard. I made 3 of them inside a specific gallery in Johannesburg. The same head I took to Namibia, and there wasn't enough grass. And with these sculptures, I tried to take local material. So what I did is I took a small vehicle or 2 small vehicles with the molds packed on the back. I took a stabilizing material and then went to the site. And on site, we collected 15 tons of material and then rammed the material, the stone and the soil of the environment into the molds. And by doing so, we left 15 tons of sculpture behind. The sculpture is made of Belfast gabbro and bronze. It's about 2.2 meters tall. This sculpture is about 4.2. It's made in different layers of stone, all from my local context. I think everybody knows it reads about South Africa. We have an interesting political landscape, also a very interesting landscape in general. Also, our geology is very interesting. So I made this sculpture and I called it Son of the Soil, because if you dig into our earth, this is literally the colors of the stones that you dig up. Some of which is from the Barberton greenstone belt, which is almost the 2nd oldest stone on earth. So the green lines is about 3.2 to 3.6 billion years old, which is quite remarkable. The gray lines is about 2 billion. The red is the freshest. It's about 260 million. So this sculpture is erected in a public space in Pretoria. So Paloma, you might have seen this one. With these pieces, I explored the color palette I have in my direct environment. Now with stone, of course, one can, like a lapidarianist, polish and make the things beautiful or leave it quite raw, like the previous sculpture. But with these, I wanted to see what happens if I combine different colors. And by doing so with these sculptures called Entangled Head, I sort of discovered my palette that works best for me from the materials around me. The stones are, it varies from hematite, which is iron, or prasiolite, which is a green quartz, dolomite, red jasper. The sculpture to the left with all the red specks in it is called heliotrope or bloodstone. That's from Swaziland. And it's just remarkable once you start digging into the earth, what immense beauty one can discover. Being here is a theme that I work with often. As I know, I have this short pause of existence. I have a life that will soon be over, like anybody else's. We're here and then we're gone. And I appreciate it. It's a thing of, it always encapsulates me. And with this specific sculpture, Savasana, or the corpse pose, I first made this in 2008. To the right, you can see it lying in the gallery. I thought the sculpture to be more in line with Lewis's Hyde's idea of the gift economy, not being part of the market economy. So coming to the gallery, there was sculpture, of course, of scale that could go places, but I thought, this is so large. It was 8.5 meters long. It was 15 tons of stone. I thought, I'll pack it, and it should be just mind-blowing. You walk into the gallery and it's filled with one great sculpture. And we physically carried it in through the door, stacked the sculpture in the gallery over 10 days and then cleaned up. But then it wasn't gift economy. It actually sold 4 editions in Damme in Belgium. It's 7 years ago. It's a block exactly my scale, and the stone used in the block is all the 4 directions from this north, Bazimbi. To the east, it's a stone from Rustenburg. To the, no, that was to the west. To the east, it's a Belfast Gabbro, and to the back, I think it was a dolomite from the Cradle of Mankind. So it's the 4 different directions and the 4 stones I gather from those directions. This is called Being and Thinking. It's 2.5 meters tall. The figure to the right is cast in bronze, and only the head is stone, where the other one is a combination of bronze cast stones. I cheat a bit, patinated back to the color of stone, and then filled with real stone. I find the one to the left far more legitimate and more real, because that's being, and thinking is the one only with the stone at the head. As I said, I have a love for physics, so sometimes particle physics and just the marvel or the magic of quantum theory, and trying to understand that gives rise to sculptures like the one at the left, which is a copper pipe. The one to the right is bronze with a stainless steel pins welded onto the bronze, finished off to round bubbles. And in the stone, its pins drilled into the stone lying on top of the head. You'll see a recurring theme. I often put stone on top of the head. I do that because it's not a bronze bust on top of a stone plinth. It's rather the physical experience of being within your lifetime, your environment, and then you're gone again. So it's not human grandeur in success over your natural environment. You're in nature. You're part of it. This was an enormous installation I did for a good friend and a great patron of the arts in South Africa, Paul Harris. This is a map of the physical winelands of South Africa, 5 by 3 meters. It's the top 100 farms, soil collected from the farm, a hole dug on each farm, 1.5 meters deep, soil taken from 1.5, 700, and then top. Photographs taken, the soil then rammed into blocks to represent the sort of map of where this block would lie, represent blocks of soil. It's rammed or compacted so much so that you could still actually smell the soil, because a lot of wine, for those that love wine, understands it's also from the diversity of the geology and your climate that gives rise to the different flavors and aromas that you have in the wine. This is partly science, part very much, and besides it being academic, it's also just magnificent as not a color field painting goes doing, but more a material field painting. At times, we create without maybe having a concept beforehand, working explicitly, knowing what you're doing and then expressing it visually, and working implicitly or working with your intuition. So you see a shape in your mind's eye, you create it, and then I created from 1/2 feet long. No, it's longer. It's sitting on slithers of Belfast gabbro. To the right, it's asteroids are made, or meteorites made from the stone closest to meteorites we can find in Africa. It's a silica iron base. The stone is a hematite, it's an iron ore. It's almost 70% steel. It's from Tabazimbi. The long end, the tail is forged stainless steel that I forged, and then that's screwed onto the hematite front end. They weigh about 400 to 600 kilograms each. The sculpture is standing, would almost be the size of the David. I love placing sculpture in outside environments, and I love making sculpture humble. So although it's almost 5 meters standing, I pushed it down, so it's only 2.4 in height. Is it 2.4? And it's a combination. It's about a ton of bronze and about 15 or 10 tons of stone packed around it. This is a tiny piece made in the only stone I get, not from South African context, but it's from the Congo, called malachite. There's a certain magic that happens if you work with the natural materials, because you have to create a dialogue between them. That what you make and that what you found. So I found years ago that if I make sculpture and I rather leave the clay to break, a natural process creates more interesting surfaces than what I could if I have to think about it. So I often pick up a stone like this piece of black banded chert to the right, and rather take my lead from that. You'll see that the plinth is a modeled bronze that's to the bottom of the sculpture in reverse, and they're just lengthened, so I could present the stone on a good height. This stone is volcanic ash compacted in the inland sea 3.2 billion years ago, which is just magnificent. It has no value other than me picking it up and polishing it up and presenting it to the viewer as a book to read. Figurative sculpture, really large. The one on the left is the scale model. It's about 2 meters in height if you would stand next to it, but then it's created with chunks of granite, each stone drilled on the inside, welded together, and then solidified with concrete to create sculptures that I think will sit forever, regardless of what earthquake or what tsunami will come. This thing is 4 meters tall, 6 meters wide, and 3 meters in depth. It took us 1.5 years to make. It sits in a garden, but it is open to public viewing in Stellenbosch. This was a sculpture created in the studio here, packed into containers and shipped to Noida or Delhi in India, and then erected on site. It's quite an irreverent figurative piece, anti-monument of note. I think that is quite clear. And the idea here was, this one is in Cape Town at the Norval Foundation. The idea was that children could access most of the sculpture. There's only 1 foot in the air, where normally if you look at a sculpture, this would be about 7, 8 meters standing. If you look at a 7 or 8 meter standing sculpture, you only have the feet. The hands are removed, the face, all the focus points are far from you. Where now the arms, the hands, the face, and 1 foot is on a little kid of 2 years can sit on it, as you can see. This is the other edition of the same sculpture made in India. And this is the team. Now, I show the team because I am not a singular artist working in a studio alone. I wish I could travel as much as Paloma did with residencies, but in South Africa, we have an immense unemployment rate. We have a very low GDP. So if anybody is capable, I think if you can contribute to our economy, it's a good thing to do so. So I started the studio in my years of study, and then it built up to what it is today, a collective of artists and artisans. And through the collective, I and some of the artists that also work here can produce work that wouldn't be possible without being part of it, which is very much the Ubuntu idea of South Africa. Bantu Kibantu Kabatho, you are because, or I am because you are. So we are dependent on each other. And to have a community like this even on the days that you feel the muse is not visiting, you have a place of work you have to go to and get the ball rolling. So it's a wonderful motivator to pitch for work every day. Anyway, so that's my little, that's all the pictures and all the things I have to share.
Thank you, Angus. And
Thank you,
Paloma.
Beautiful work.
Yeah, very beautiful. We can start now with some questions. I want to kick off this part of the webinar with a question for Angus about, I see in your work, there's this thing about the being more intuitive that you kind of choose over the over-intellectualized, and especially in that work where you have the two figures and you said, well, I prefer the being, it's more raw. And it kind of shows again with this thing about thinking without knowing, more in your practice as maybe a professor in university. So can you expand a bit more about this idea about intuition or the being in your practice?
I'll gladly do so. There's a writer that I came across years ago, Ian Gilchrist, which I'm going to just quote or just mention. He did a lot of study in how the brain works, and not the 1970s left and right brain, the one is creative and the one is rational, but more that the brain is a split. There's two CPUs, there's two systems running at the same time, and the one is quite, and although they both do this similar work, they do it in different ways. It's not what they do, but how they do it. Now, the one side of the brain is comfortable working with the known, that what we can circumscribe, that we can categorize, that we can pack in little boxes, that is comfortable. That is that we can verbalize and send in academic papers across the world. The other side of the brain maybe works with poetry, maybe works with sculpture, maybe works with visceral experience. And that part of the brain is being ignored quite a bit in our education system. And I'm saying that because of old, when if you studied medicine, you had to study the classics, you had to understand literature, you had to understand many things. You can't just be a doctor. Now we're very task-orientated and we're very fixated in the information revolution. So when I make sculpture, and you also find with my bio that I don't want to validate myself verbally through accolades and goodies and things. It's more about the materials I work with. And if I work with the material, as I said with that black stone I showed, I like to give the material the lead and see where that takes me. I like to model a sculpture and I leave it to crack and break and see where that takes me. And through that, I think I discover a dialogue. And it's a humble process, because if you come into it, you can call it also ungrounded. So instead of going with a premise into the field to go prove it, you go into the field or into the studio, you mess about, and then through deduction, you come to a process or material that you like to work with or explore. And I think in that process, there's a lot more discovered, but that is not the way we go about it now, because if you want a research grant, you must stack out or verbalize exactly what you're going to go study and what you're going to find. And in a way, how could you know? Because you haven't started to study it. Exactly. So in my practice and in my teaching, also with students, I often say that when we start the class, it's easy to BS. It's easy to go and lift pictures from the internet and conglomerate a new picture that maybe discover something authentic. And it might be naive, it might be immature when you start, but give that time, give that 20 years, and you will get to a oeuvre or a practice that might be your own. If we just lift pictures and we keep on conceptually validating why it is valid and why we should make it, then I don't think we're going to discover anything.
Okay, cool. Thanks for asking that. Then I think in both of your presentations, obviously there's a lot about the geography of where you're based and how that speaks about yourself as an artist, but also how the artwork can speak on itself about your location. And for me, that choice is quite political, even in yourself, Angus, if you say maybe the anti-agenda or the anti-monument, the choice of those materials, and in your case, Paloma, the choice of your materials in terms of like taking things that are being wasted or looking at the urban landscape and saying, oh, wow, like actually the cables disrupt the horizons. So my next question goes around those choices. And in your case, Paloma, how do you see your practice in that urban landscape in the city? And do you see your practice as architectural as well?
Well, yes, it's a little architectural because I like to construct. In a way, I make sculpture, but I like to construct. And what I like for my construction is the process. But this process is full of the things I'm looking. No, for example, when they do the second floor of the peripheral, for me it was, my God, you know, looking all those rebars and all these scaffolds, all these things were like elements that I wanted to use for my things. So also, you know, in a way, yes, I work with my work. I work a lot with architects here in Mexico, and right now I'm working with some architects in London, in England. But you know, it's because I think my difference with the sculptures, well, that I think also the sculptures of Angus, they have, all the sculpture makes space, but in the scale that Angus works, he has to work with the space as if he was building something, a house, a building or something like that. For me, it's also the same, but I want to, you know, to do like nodes, I don't know how to say in English, nodos, like a kind of marks in the place that for example, that sculpture of Angus, of the man that was in red, in the colors, for me, that is Pretoria. It was funny because I didn't know him. But, you know, each time I went with Ana Luisa, the ambassador, I say, this artist, who is he? Because it was, you know, it was so concentrated in a place and it was so local. It's like if it were Africa. I don't know how to say. For me, that it was the first time that I went to Pretoria. And when I meet Angus, I say he's the artist. I don't know, you know, I start discovering because when I went to his space, you know, in Mexico is completely different. All the artists we work in different ways because we have very tiny spaces, tiny spaces. And in the city that is very polluted, we cannot do a lot of things. For example, the foundry, impossible. So all the artists, we work in different places for doing all those things. But yes, I like to work with all the garbage that I found in the building constructions. I love to take, I always go and do like this and say, can I see what you have in your garbage? And people says, oh, you are crazy. But you know, I love, since I was at school, because I remember I was doing my printings, and if something doesn't go very well, I printing that I start, you know, doing like this and put one in another. I like to work with garbage. That's horrible, but it's true.
I love it. Great. And then going back to what I briefly mentioned about the anti-monument, especially your work, Angus, at that Norval Foundation, where we could see that image with the children. Do you think at the core of your idea of anti-monument is like a playful notion, and that's why you laugh about the notion of monument? Or could you expand a bit more about that notion of the anti-monument?
I think it started with my father, Barbara. He was a journalist, and he said to me when I was really young that I must be careful what I say, because when he writes a newspaper article, newspapers goes to waste and his work is lost. But if you make a sculpture and it communicates something, if you're talking rubbish, it's going to communicate rubbish for a very long time. So it's quite a thing that one has to consider. Now, I grew up in the 70s in South Africa, 80s, and of course, everybody knows, I think, the history of this place. And the government of old planted flags and they erected sculptures to state their claim. And so does the new government, and so did the British government before. And public art in general was always propaganda for state or church or even commerce. But it was rare that you could see art for art's sake. And people they don't understand it. So when you place a sculpture in a public space, people almost expect it to be a propaganda of sorts. So if you turn something on its head, there's a sculpture we made in Pretoria of an upside-down cow, enormous, where the udder is so big that the teeth's in bronze, and it's called the udder side. And it is really just irreverent. It is just an anti-monument of note. And I think through that, you communicate the playfulness and maybe concept and the freedom and the poetry. And maybe you create space for people's imagination that they can believe or think what they want to think. And it's not only what you want them to think, as propaganda of old was.
Exactly.
I think my internet connection is poor, so I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, it's just a bit of delay, but we can hear you, so it's fine. Don't worry. Perfect. And then Paloma, about in your presentation, there were some phrases that I found super interesting, but there were some were they in Spanish. So I kind of took some words to resume the English. Oh, you have some. I'm interested in this idea of the art not invading, but being integrated. And he put some images of like what seemed like a forest, and there was like an installation, almost like the art and nature. So that relationship, and I see the natural element comes through in quite a lot of your works, like when you with the rain, or when you say with the river. So thinking about natural elements and how these, mostly water, but also trees, and how do you think that dialogue between your work and nature?
You know why? I think that when you live in a city, the urban landscape is your garden. So that's my natural, that's my nature. But when you're talking about forests, about trees, about all this, that in the cities each time are less and less and less. I like, you know, the sculptures to disappear in some moments. For example, my sculptures, when it's the rainy seasons like we are right now, they become green, completely green, and they disappear into the forest. So I like that. I don't like to be so present in the land, you know, that the sculpture is so present, but that if they can be like part of the landscape. I don't know how to say, not just as a thing that is like this, for example. I don't like to have this existing all the time, but I love that nature can go inside this and become green and become some other thing. I don't know how to say. I'd like the piece to transform, to talk, to move. The patina is very important, but you know, it's different with the work of Angus, because I don't know, those pieces that are in the floor like this, with all the stones, my God, wonderful. All the work is wonderful, but there are different kind. Is the soil, your soil and my soil. You live on a place that is La Sabana, that is very big, and I live with mountains. My landscape is of big mountains, and I live on a valley. Imagine, that's the problem of Mexico, that we have volcanoes all around, and it's like a pot, so all the pollution stays in here. So it's like we were cooking all the time. So That's why maybe I don't like the things are very so present in life. Maybe, no, but I love this mixture in between nature and between art. And you know, I think that people that doesn't live with art, or the cities that, or human beings that cannot sing, cannot listen, cannot see, in the way you were saying, in this intuitive way, no, it's not for being artists, it's just to have a view of life wider. Art gives you that purpose. You see more in your life if you are more sensitive. And art is what gives you up. So if we have to have harmonious spaces, because you know, you say no, because the new art, it has to be everything ugly. We live in horrible cities in a way. When you see all these pictures, maybe they look very nice in the tapestry, but it's terrifying to live in that place, full of people without moving in a massive way. So just to take care and to say art has to exist, but just to say think. You have to think more and to see more, what you want and what you don't want. Sorry.
No problem. And Paloma, so for example, on those aerial shots that you do, no, of certain neighborhoods that then you blow up on the tapestry. So what is your intention in terms of what do you want to generate on the visitors, on the people that go and see those works? Is it like a political statement? What do you expect from people that see those shots blown up in such a big proportion?
What we are doing to nature, what we are doing to the places where we are living, we don't have any kind of, you know, we live in a very bad way. You know, we cannot leave these people to live in those tiny houses, one, and without any kind of nature, because we need it to breathe. You need it for that reason. So I want people to see what we are making to our world. How can we manage to live in a different form? It's political in the sense that I want people to take care of the landscape where they live, that they cannot build me in my window a floor like this, so I cannot see anything, that we have to respect the other, you know, and we have to live in a different way, and that the politicians, because the politicians are the ones that do that kind of things, they have to think that they are living people. It's the same in South Africa. I've been last year, and when you see the houses of all these workers, even if the government is a black government, the black continue living in a way different, in a different way. I don't know, it's the sense I had when I went. No, I'm very fond of all the things you have made. And for example, I've been in Cape Town, and it's a huge city with a lot of art. But you know, you continue looking these tiny places in tea, because here the houses are in a way with soil. So it's different. In there are tea and live a lot of families. For example, in Pretoria, near the museum, in this place for Mandela, it was all the slum houses, just near. And I say, how the government cannot arrange these people to live in different ways or to educate. I know that it's a kind of education of generations. I'm not saying anything about your government, but we have to see people in a different way. We have to see us in a different way. We live on a planet, and we live all together. And we have to live in the best way. If we do have people that live in better conditions, we're going to have less violence. That's for sure. And the problem in the world is violence also. No? So my country is very violent. I don't know yours, but mine is really violent. And it's because it's very poor, we don't have education, and we live in very bad conditions. That's why I want the people to see.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. And then one of my last questions before then we open the floor to the general questions. Is for Angus. Two things. First, in terms of the sculpture that you have at Nirox, that you mentioned that you put that huge figure in a humble posture that's like lying down. And second, about not only the posture, but how do you feel the materials being exposed? Like you feel you like that? I get the sense that you like that, but like a lot of artists are like very wary of, no, the sculpture will deteriorate. Will it survive? How is your relationship with the materials in that sense?
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier, but being precious about who you are, what you do, or what you leave behind is not my focus. Sometimes, of course, you do make things that enter the market, and it's absorbed by the market and collected by the market. But that's not why we are. I mean, I've never in all the years of studying or teaching, I haven't met one student that came into arts thinking they're going to make a financial killing. You know, that's not why you go study art. You study art because you love it. And a lot of art, the transience, and it's both my partner and myself enjoy working with that, is working with the transience of being. So you make something, if you're not precious about it, like the rammed earth sculptures I made, and it's strong enough, if you look after it, that it can actually last a lifetime or two. But if you're nasty, you take a stone to it, you can take it from being as quickly as you can take a life. So I donated it to universities and sometimes to towns, and often young drunk people with nothing to do at night would break them, but then it's over. And in a way, it's sort of metaphoric to our own vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I think I have quite an issue with human grandeur. I have an issue with us wanting to stake claim and making things rigid and thinking it will be so for all time to be. Even our continents is moving, and they will subduct one day and most probably melt. So whatever now a city might be, go back into the belly of earth and come out as new stone. We don't know. Billions of years. But in our little frame, we think it's permanent, but it isn't. But some things, of course, you do make and you gift it, and it's nice if it remains. And if other things goes, it's part of life. I like it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, like, I can see that thread throughout your practice, this idea of almost like with humor in some of your works, like when you have the figures like upside down, in some cases, not with a humor element, but that thing about the temporality of us as humans, I feel it's like one of your main threads throughout your practice.
That's true. That's true.
So I don't have any more questions. I don't know if you, Angus or Paloma, want to add anything else or have a question for the other that you want to raise now.
If I can just say to Paloma, when she spoke about the work and wanting to bring in, not wanting to, no, I just want to say, my signal comes and goes. I don't know if I'm heard or not. When I looked at your sculptures and I looked at the columns,
yes,
they very much referred to the experience to me of walking amongst trees in a forest. So you're in a city landscape, you make it out of ceramic, but you breathe life into it because you made it with your hands. And it's organic and it's not perfect. And there's different textures to it. And even if it's pure white, or it's a terracotta clay, or it's something darker, there's a life in each of those columns because you made it. You breathe life through your hands into it, the poetry of making or messing with material. And I think if you would walk amongst it, even in a crowded city like in Mexico, there's something of the experience of walking amongst your parents' legs when you were a kid, or walking amongst big trees. So I really liked them. And I love the sculpture you made in Venezuela. You said barro, the one with the rebar within the white blocks.
It was like a clock, What I like also is that
that one was particularly one of my favorites. I want to say well done.
Sculpture works with, I have several of those ones, but I like that the sun works with the sculpture. So you can see one thing in one moment, and then you see another thing, and the shades play with the material, with the space, with everything. So you can have something that is not so rigid in that way, no? But yes, and you know what I like a lot of the work, that those ones that
Only
are, the ones that are, I cannot hear you because it cuts a lot.
Okay. Well, I wanted to say you can only make sculpture that works with the sun if you're from the southern hemisphere. You can't make it with the sun.
No. But I like that the sculptures that are outside, most of my things are for outside, works with the climate, with the sun, if they move, they disappear. When it's in the shade, when it's in the sun, something happens. I don't know. I like the elements, the natural elements work with the sculptures. But what I wanted to tell you about your work that I like very much is this poetry of these cranes or these faces that you make with grass. I love them. And also this kind of the ones that, because you are very near from this kind of sculpture also in some moments with Goldsworthy or no, some kind of artist like that I love very much. And you know, I think that in some cases you have like two different kind of sculptures. I don't know how to say. You have your heroes that are the ones that you make also with wings, no? And all those. And you have this other kind of sculpture that it rise from the earth. I don't know how to say. Even if it's in stone or in very rigid, it's like something that is growing from the earth. It's like natural elements. I love that kind of work. Congratulations, Santos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Arturo, what would you like to do? Should we open the floor to questions?
I have three questions, but first I would like to intervene because I was just like astonished by the work they both presented. It's really wonderful. Paloma, I have a question for you. Like I was looking at your columns, and well, I have two questions, but I was looking at your columns, and then I see that you have columns in exhibitions, columns in indoors, columns in outdoors. What is the difference, like conceptual difference of your columns when they are displayed in these different like spaces?
Oh, it's the place where you display them. But for example, the one where Eric Cámara is a curator in Mexico, the slide you saw about the 7 columns, this African man was walking in, is a curator, a very well-known curator in Mexico. But you know, this is a sculpture that is going to Hawaii. I did it. It was the last piece I did from the pandemic. And it was a commission, but as these people from Hong Kong couldn't go to their house in Hawaii, they let me show the sculpture. So I decided to do a place where people can walk into the sculpture, but because I have another project of doing some tapestries, to embroider, with the walking of the people in the art space, how they see and how they move along all these sculptures. And well, some are for outside because I do it and I don't have space, so I put it in my patio, all my sculptures, so they can have the rain and everything. But you know, here in Mexico, ceramics is very good for the outside, not for the snow, but for outside they are very good. So some people put it inside, some people do it outside.
Thank you, Paloma. And just the other question, like for you as obviously as a plastic artist, what is the meaning of color? Because obviously you work with raw materials, and then a lot of your sculptures are very, very like white. So what is the meaning of color in your your
No,
art?
my first work was with a lot of color, a lot of color, because in Mexico we have the tradition of painting houses, and for example, like in the tapestries, you could see we have the commercial painting comics. So we talk about the Mexican colors, and that's fake. That is not true. We have the commercial colors of comics. So we can see, you have it like a code. You know that the yellow, that kind of canario yellow, it's going to be a hardware, or the blue is going to be a place to a pharmacy, or each color has to be with a different kind of space, of activity. So you can read it. It's like a secret code, but of the commercial colors. So I started painting a lot my things. And then one moment I say, we have a lot of pollutions with the billboards, with the cables, with everything. We have a lot of noise, of visual noise. So I start painting in white my landscapes to have a little peace in my mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Paloma. Angus, I really love the tension in your work. Like it's really fascinating to see how you combine pieces of stone and then you create a very dynamic sculpture. That's very interesting. And I think you play a lot with this dualism. Like you were also talking about the left side of the brain, and the right side of the brain, the creative process versus the intellectual process. So what is the importance of this tension? And then also these big pieces of heads, and then there is a stone on top of them that is in balance. So what is the importance for you of this dualism in your work? Because I saw lots of tension and this fine type of balance between big pieces of sculpture.
Arturo, yeah, I suppose we are in a landscape of immense contrast and conflict. So there is a necessity between or a balance that you must try to achieve between continuity and discontinuity, between chaos and maybe, or order and disorder. But it's also, you can't make a charcoal drawing on black paper. You need the contrast between the white and the black to be able to see it. And in our environment, as Paloma alluded to earlier, in her environment, it is a very hard social climate where there's lots of poverty, there's lots of unemployment, there's lots of crime, there's lots of this, there's lots of that. And it's a difficult existence in a way. So I thought years ago when I was in New York, I can't make the work that Jeff Koons make. I would be a liar because I'm not from that environment. I can't make the celebration series. I don't believe in celebrating as if everything is la-di-da. And fine, if you could, and I love the work. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But the work I make, I need that dialogue between the different poles. And it's not a binary. It's not necessarily the one side versus the other. It's the scale. You know, it's the experience from the one side to the other side. So you can work with stone and you can over control it. And you can make a beautiful object and you can leave it raw and you can discover something that's actually more fascinating. You can control a sculpture and capture it at the height of the bell curve, or you can leave it to deteriorate to the other side of the bell curve and then capture it. And through each of the processes, there's something else you show. And like Paloma that just said, you know, she had to find peace in her landscapes. I want to be truthful. So if I tell of something and I make a sculpture that's propaganda of all disorder, then I'm also making the world, as Paloma also said earlier, it's hard already. Why make it harder? If I make it all celebration series, it's a bit propaganda of everything is just lovely. It isn't. But somewhere in between, there's a balance. There's a dialogue between these things that we're trying to get right. So the sculptures with the heads balancing on their stones, it's a fine balance, your existence here. And I call them entangled heads because it refers to physics where particles are entangled, regardless of how far you move them across the universe, they remain entangled. And I think if you grew up in an environment like we did, either in Mexico or South Africa, and you know the contrasts in being, there's a certain understanding. And even if you remove and you go live in Norway, you'll still be from this place. You'll still know of these contrasts. And therefore you are entangled with this place and there's a stone in your head. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it keeps you in your place. So I'd rather look at it as that.
No, I love them. I think it's great the way you bring this harmony between these contrasts and the tension, but also in a very harmonious way. I really like it. I will just finish with 3 questions that we have on Facebook. I just posted here in the chat. I pasted here in the chat, and maybe it will be a good way for you to wrap up and finish and give closure to this webinar. The first one is, where does it's for both of you. So where does your inspiration for creating a sculpture come from? The first one. The second one is, how land and local materials reflect identity in your pieces. And how do you think, I don't know exactly about this one, how do you think tour art can make a change in the world? Sorry.
I think, Arturo, the last one, I'm sure it is, how do you think your art?
Oh, yeah,
yes.
Maybe. How do you think your art? Yeah.
No, I also really like
okay. Yeah. How do you think your art can make a change in the world? So the 3 questions are there in the chat. But please, and maybe we can use this as closure for our webinar. Paloma, Angus, whoever wants to start.
It's very pretentious saying that your work is going to change the world. It changed my own world, I think, what I'm doing, my own world. And if it changed my own world, it's just a little drop that you are changing your around, but it doesn't change the world. I think my art doesn't change the world. But in a way, well, okay, my inspiration is my everyday life, or going, or what I'm reading, or what I see. Inspiration comes from, for example, from all the things I have seen, from the books I'm reading, from, I don't know, inspiration is life in a way. No, and work. That's inspiration. Work and live and see and listen and talk with other people. And
Arturo, it's good answers, Paloma. Arturo, there was 3 questions. It was inspiration, and what was the second one?
Sorry, how land and local materials reflect identity in your pieces.
Local identity. Okay. I think I'm going to skip the identity because I'm not. Again, it's a thing of human specifics, identity politics. So I'm going to skip that one. So also just answer inspiration. I agree with Paloma. I think as a youngster, if you are lucky enough to discover your calling, and it might be a calling, it might be a love, it might be a passion, it might be a choice. But if you discover something that you really enjoy, you are very fortunate, because there's a lot of people that at 40, 50, 60 still don't know what they like. So at least if you know you like drawing, or you're really happy when you play with a piece of clay and you might be good at it, you're lucky. And as soon as you start, you're never done. So you'll never master it. You'll never be the master of it. There's always people much better. There's always so much to learn. When you pick up a new stone, a new type of clay, a new method, a new material, if you travel, you need a new book, as you said, you'll never be finished. So inspiration, if I had 4 days for every day, well, no, 5 days, I could fill it. I could never understand at school that children come back from holidays and say they were bored. I always thought I should get their holidays because I always had so much that I wanted to do, and I still do. I'm frustrated that I have to sleep. So I think inspiration is it's a thing of how you go about being. There's so much to be interested in. There's so much to discover, and soon it's over. And you know, the more you know how little you know. So as you go on, you know there's so much to learn. I wish I could go back to university and study geology and study chemistry and study physics. I wish I had 5 lifetimes, but we only have what we have. And then I agree with Paloma about change, although each of us in our own way, if you make art, you might inspire other people, that they might discover the gift economy of art. I was lucky enough that my mother studied art and we had art books in our home. And I had a book on Marino Marini, one of her art books. And I remember as a kid paging through this thing, and amongst all the other psychology books of my father's and you know, and also the photography books on models and whatever else would interest a young boy, this specific book of Marini, it captured my imagination, and each year I paged through it, it grew more into my being, and it's thanks to his gift giving of creating things that inspired me to make things. I mean, what is life about? We are here to maybe fulfill a certain purpose, not that I think there's fate or anything mystical like that, but we need meaning. And if you can make things and make it meaningful for other people, and they can discover maybe a fraction or a little bit of experience or meaning through what you do, you share. And it's a wonderful thing to do. And I mean, as people being the most social animals on earth, art is just another way of communicating. And it's not to say that Paloma myself has the answers to the problems of the world or the problems of identity politics or whatever, but maybe we create space for imagination. Maybe we make ceramic columns that looks like trees in a cityscape that needs something organic. You know, maybe you inspire through the scale of which you work with things. Maybe you show the beauty of scaffolding and building material and you know, rubbish, just to say, look at it. So I think, yeah, through poetry, we maybe share the beauty of being.
Yes, exactly what you say. Exactly.
Thank you so much. Well, I think we can finish this webinar. It's been wonderful. I have no words to thank you, Paloma, to thank you, Angus, Barbara, for moderating this webinar. Paloma, I really hope you come anytime soon. Angus and I would love you to go to Mexico also.
Angus, you're invited, and Barbara. You're invited to Mexico.
I want to go.
I will bring them with me next time that I go to Mexico.
Come stay in my house.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you very much for this wonderful webinar. It's been really fascinating. Thank you to all the people that were watching us, and have a good evening in South Africa. Have a good afternoon in Mexico.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Arturo. Thanks, Angus and Paloma.
And
Bye.
I was happy to be in South Africa. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.